Monuments of Wales based in Aberystwyth.
This meeting is being recorded.
And my job essentially is to curate and promote the list of historic place names. So what I'm going to talk about tonight is why the Welsh Government felt that we needed such a thing, and the process of how we went about compiling it. You know, where have we got the place names from? What type of place names are they? What do place names tell us about the history and heritage of Wales? And what are we doing in the all-important sort of campaign to preserve Welsh place names? Because as you're all probably aware, place names are something of a hot topic at the moment in Wales, because there's a definite perception that we are losing place names, particularly Welsh language place names, although not exclusively. And what's happening is that historic Welsh place names are being replaced by new ones, and generally Welsh names are being replaced by English ones. So we've got a couple of particularly egregious examples here. I'm sure you've all heard of Happy Donkey Hill, which is a farm outside Llandysul in Ceredigion, which is actually called Vaerdre Fach. Now, Vaerdre Fach is a name that goes back at least 500 years. A Maerdre is a manorial settlement, and Fach obviously means small. So, that name, as well as being quite so old, it tells us about the type of land use in the area at least 5 centuries ago, and probably considerably older. Whereas Happy Donkey Hill tells us that a particularly happy donkey is there, and it's not quite the same thing. Then we have Plas Glyn Llifon, which is one of the houses of the Watkin Williams Wynn dynasties, who owned most of the northwest of the country at one point. And this was put on the market a few years ago under the name Wimborne Hall, on the basis that a house with a Welsh name wouldn't sell, even if it's a mansion. Then we also have Mountain Sea View, which is a farm just a couple of miles south from where I'm sitting, actually. The farm's name is Bwlcheinion. Bwlch is a sort of a gap or a pass, if you like, as it's at the sort of the mouth of Cwm Einion. And there's also another farm there called Blaen Einion. And the river Einion flows through Cwm Einion, and you see the links between all of the place names in the valley there. And what's happened here is that the farmer who owns the site has decided to diversify and open a glamping business, which is fine. But again, she was afraid that tourists wouldn't come to a place with a Welsh name. So she thought, well, it's up a mountain and you can sort of see the sea. I'll call it Mountain Sea View. Likewise, we have Little Pudding Cottage, which is actually called Pont Bryn Ddu. Sorry, if you just saw me gesturing wildly, my son decided to walk in at that point. Which is actually, as I say, called Pont Bryn Ddu. Now, Pont Bryn is a wooden bridge, and Ddu is black. So again, it's, the name is connected to a local feature, whereas Little Pudding Cottage is honestly just a stupid name. Likewise, Cwm Tiddy, which is a village on the Ceredigion coast, where Visit Wales were running a sort of a promotion of the coastal path, which is an excellent idea. And what they did is they got a young couple to walk on the coastal path all through Ceredigion and blog about what they saw and what they did, which went very well until they got to Cwm Tiddy, and they sort of obviously Googled, right, what is there to do at Cwm Tiddy, and they found a website created by a man from Birmingham who'd been on holiday there once, who saw a seal there, and so decided to call the place Seals Bay. And so, of course, young couple thought, oh, right, Seals Bay, that must be the English for Cwm Tiddy. And it isn't. There is no English for Cwm Tiddy. Means Valley with the Black House, by the way. And it has only ever been called Cwm Tiddy. And these kind of things keep happening. And people get very, very angry about it. And it was very obvious by 2016 that something needed to be done. And the something that was done is the Historic Environment Wales Act of 2016, which, amongst other things, placed on Welsh ministers the obligation to establish a list of historic place names, where names, not just ones that have been sort of lost off the map, like Pontbrenddi and Plas Llyn, but ones that were in any way historical, could be added together, and we would have a fully searchable database available online to the general public, as well as to scholars and to government and local government and interested parties like that, where our place name heritage would be protected and widely available. And so the system now for changing your house name in Wales is that you're supposed to write to your local council and alert them that you're changing the name of your house, and they're supposed to write back with an information pack explaining essentially, if the name appears in the list of historic place names, or if it's pre-1900, pre-1920, explaining the importance of historic names, and particularly Welsh language names, and why you shouldn't change them. And they ask you very nicely to reconsider. And then you have a cooling off period of 10 days to think about it. And if you go ahead, well, it's your house. Yours is the final decision. So how are we doing on this? We've had a certain amount of success in getting data out of local authorities. I was speaking to the representatives of each of the local authorities a couple of weeks ago now, and they've all agreed to give us a regular annual sort of data input. But this is what we've got so far, because I've talked about how we're losing Welsh names and they're being replaced by English, and this is definitely, as I say, the perception. But what we're seeing actually in the local authority data is, if anything, the other way around. If you look at the records for Ceredigion there, in 2020, we had 10 Welsh names changed to English, as opposed to 1 Welsh name changed to English. Sorry, 10 English names changed to Welsh, as opposed to 1 name changed from Welsh to English. And as regards new names, 230 new Welsh ones for 11 new English ones. And then down the bottom in Powys, you can see that they've had 70 changes 2017 to 2019, and again the majority of them have actually been English to Welsh. So one of the things we're looking at is an attempt to get to the bottom of this, because people are obviously annoyed, and it's very easy when you walk past a house that's been called something in Welsh for the past 100 years and suddenly it's got a new name in English. It's very easy to notice that. But we're not quite sure yet what the real picture is. To what extent is it just that people notice and get very annoyed, and it's actually blown out of proportion to the actual scale of the problem. And another interesting thing to note here is what's happening down in Merthyr Tydfil. They're not losing any Welsh names, but what they are finding is that when they build a new estate of houses down there, the owners want to name their houses and they want to name them in Welsh, even though obviously down there they're majority English speaking. So there's something interesting culturally happening there. Now, the other thing about the list of historic place names is that it has a statutory existence, which is to say that local government and Welsh government and the various arm's length bodies like the Archaeological Trusts and Natural Resources Wales and Cadw and things like that are legally obliged to use our data when naming and renaming new houses and streets and estates and developments and things like that. So here's a list of the local authorities that we know for a fact are using our data. So these are the ones who have either contacted me and said, how do we get access to your data, or who have informed us in other ways that they are. Hopefully, all the rest of the 22 are as well. But as you can see, we've got about half of them definitely are. And we're going to be pressuring the others to make sure that they do use it. And we're already seeing real world success with these. These are 4 planned housing estates. The nice satellite photo on the bottom left there is outside Fishguard. And you might notice the medieval strip field system there. And we were able to find historic field names for that particular development, which I think evidence suggests that they are very, you know, that we've got them recorded from 1840, but evidence suggests that the names themselves are rather older. So it's entirely possible that that housing estate on the outskirts of Fishguard has been named using names that are originally centuries old, which would be excellent. And then we've got 3 other examples from various places in Glamorgan. So we've got councils all across Wales making sure that a new housing estate isn't just named something generic. I mean, it's, you know, as you've been driving around Wales, you'll have noticed any amount of Broad Dowells, or, you know, Trem y Brins, or that kind of thing. And, you know, yes, those names are in Welsh, but they're not historic either. They're just made up and they sound nice. You know, we want to make sure that we're using historic names all across the country. And obviously in the more anglicised parts, that is going to include historic names in English as well. You know, we're not going to be creating new names in Welsh in areas where, you know, the language hasn't been spoken for a century and a half. You know, these are the historic names of that area. Now, the list is, as I said, freely available to the public in the form of a website, which is fully bilingual. You can do absolutely everything on it in either English or Welsh, whichever you fancy. This is our homepage with a nice historic map. And we've got sort of various options you can go from there. We've got a blog, which is updated roughly once a month. Where this is where we sort of share new developments. You know, if we've put in names from a particularly interesting source, you know, we'll talk about that. Give an idea of talks that are coming up. You know, different things we've been doing. And we also have a glossary, which is of course particularly useful to non-Welsh speakers using the list, because what we have here is a list of common place name elements in Welsh, with a translation into English and a couple of, on the right there, of examples of place names that use that particular element. So we've got things like, you know, Bryn and Bwlch, which I mentioned earlier, and Cadair, Cai, that kind of thing. And one of the things we're looking to do hopefully soon is to upload sound files onto each of these, so you'll be able to hear someone pronouncing each element, which will hopefully cut down on the amount of times people ask me if they're on the road to Machineleth. If you click on any of these, for instance, Bwbach, which I've chosen here, that's a sort of a bogeyman or a goblin, something like that. If you click on Bwbach, it will take you to this list, which will tell you that there are 21 place names which contain the word Bwbach. So as you can see here, we've got Allt y Bwbach, and Allt is a steep wooded slope. We've got Bryn Bwbach, Bryn's a hill, obviously, and Cai Bwbach, so that's, you know, the Goblin's Field. And if you click on map there, you can then see where the different Bwbach place names are distributed around the country. And as you can see, we've got the historic county boundaries on there and the parish boundaries as well, so you can see precisely where they are. And if you were to click on one of them, for instance, Twll y Bwbach, just outside Dolgellau, it'll take you precisely straight to the location. And this will take you to, you know, an individual page for each name. So you can see there that Tulla Bubach, oh, sorry, and you'll be able to see that the map has changed. Throughout the website, you can scroll between the 1900 OS and the modern OS, which is always interesting for seeing how things have changed. In the case of the village where I live, the only thing that's changed since 1900 is that one farm has been replaced by a small housing estate, and that's it. Everything else is exactly the same. But this gives you sort of information about, gives you the grid reference, so you can go, you could walk precisely to Tulla Bubach. It gives you the county, which, as I say, is the 13 historic counties. So, obviously Holt is in Denbighshire in these terms rather than in Wrexhamshire. It gives you the parish, which is the pre-1974 civil parish, and it gives you the date when this particular form of the name was recorded. Because the thing with the place names list is that we're not recording names per se, we're recording forms of names. So if you were to look at Tulla Bubach, you'd see this spelling that we've got from the 1900 OS. But if we've got older spellings and they're different, you'll see those as well. And if we've got a different name for Tulla Bubach, if it was called something else a century previously, we've recorded that as well. And so here are some quick statistics for you. So we were launched in May 2017, which is a month or so before I was employed. And in that time, we've had 384,854 people visit the website, which is an average this year of about 275 different people a day, which is pretty good as these things go. 112 people have left comments. You can comment on each individual place names. Obviously, with those, we get quite a lot of what does this mean? And so I write back and explain. But what's nice as well is we found that people have started talking to each other in the comments, and not in the way people generally talk to each other on internet comment forums, I'm very pleased to say, but in a very sort of nice positive way. There's a farm down in Carmarthenshire called Cwm Gwyneddi, for instance, and someone posted things saying, oh, my grandmother used to live here. I've always wondered what it means. Can anyone tell me? And before I was able to write back with an explanation, a member of the public had written back and said, oh, I live just up the valley. This is what it means. And then someone else had written, oh, that's fascinating. My uncle lived sort of 2 doors down. I always thought it meant this. And, people are starting to sort of discuss place names in the comments, which is very nice. We also have a inquiry form, which 237 people so far have availed themselves of. This is for more sort of in-depth inquiries. We have a lot of people asking to find, the house where their ancestors lived or where their grandfather was born or that sort of thing. And most importantly, I suppose, we have 692,794 names in the list currently. That's as of today. From 1,251 different sources. And I'll now move on and start talking about the different sources that we have in the list. But just to sort of give you an idea of scale, the Irish government has a similar sort of project going. And they've been going, I think, 12 years now. And I was there 2 years ago, and they were very pleased that they had 12,000 names in their website. And if you think, we've got near enough 700,000. So this is the largest place names database of its type in the world, and freely accessible to the public. But on to sources. And I imagine you've been sitting there the whole time thinking, well, this is absolutely lovely, James, fascinating, but what about Holt? Well, here's Holt in 1840. Because the first source and the largest source that we have in the list is the Cynefin project. Now, Cynefin was a project run out of the National Library in Aberystwyth to digitise and transcribe the tithe maps from the 1840s tithe. And this is rather a nice example of one, actually, for the town of Holt and the surrounding area. And as you can see from the map, what you had with these was you had the map itself, and each field or plot of land was numbered, and then you had a corresponding key. So you could look up, number 96 there at the bottom right, and it would tell you the name of the field, who owned it, who was working it, what type of field it was, was it arable, was it grazing, how much it was worth to the tithe, and in many, many cases, what the name of the field was. And this was all, as I say, digitized by volunteers at the National Library, and we received the place names data, which means that we have just over 500,000 field names, which is not quite one name for every field in Wales. There are some gaps, unfortunately. Also, in a lot of places, what people did was they just wrote field or cae or something like that in Welsh. And so obviously we had to strip those names out. And as you can see here, when looking at the town, obviously all the different houses and plots of land with them are numbered as well. And those would have just been referred to in the tithe generally as, house or cottage and garden or that sort of thing. Although you do have a large number of pub names recorded this way, and we've kept them in as well, because obviously the vast majority of those pubs don't exist anymore. So, you should be able to find the names of the pubs that were in Holt in 1841 through looking at this. Then the next source was Cymru 1900, which is similar to Cynefin. It was a project to, again, digitize a historic map and transcribe everything on it. In this case, the 1900 second edition Ordnance Survey map. And this image here gives you an idea of the density of the data from that. Each little green point is a name. And this was hugely successful, so much so that it was rolled out to the rest of Great Britain and became GB 1900. Sorry, having a quick drink there. And they collected literally millions of points of data from that. And we have 150,000 names, I think, from GB 1900. So this is where we get things like house names, river names, stream names, field names, names of sort of coastal features, that sort of thing. So we've got those back for at least 100 years. And then the other sort of important data set that we received early on was the Place Names archive of the Centre for Advanced Welsh and Celtic Studies in Aberystwyth. And this gave us access to mostly medieval names. And of course, the important thing with names written down in the medieval period is that they're not exclusively going to be written in Welsh or English, because obviously I've talked a lot about Welsh language names, but they're not the only names we collect. Basically, we're collecting anything that any place has been called in Wales in any language whatsoever. So obviously we have lots of names in Latin and Norman French, and some in Anglo-Saxon in the northeast of the country. And we've also got a certain amount of coastal names, which we've got from navigational texts in various European languages. So, the various names for islands off Pembrokeshire in things like Catalan and Portuguese and Low German, because obviously sailors needed to know where the rocks were to avoid them. And so this allows us to give sort of a naming history of each of the towns and villages in Wales. So if you look at the image here, and if you look to the right, and you'll see the name Holt in a sort of squarish box there. So that's what we call a head name. So Holt is the head name because it's the name of the settlement. And then the recorded names are all of the variants of the name Holt that we've collected from all across the centuries. Now, Holt, obviously, it's an Anglo-Saxon name. A holt is a thicket or a wood. And we've got it recorded as early as 1326, and then Le Holt in 1327, which is obviously the French for Holt. And then, intriguingly, Villa Leonum in 1496, which I'd be fascinated if any of you could tell me why suddenly it's Villa Leonum. And then in 1566, we have it in Welsh as Holt, and then Holt again in 1568, and then Holt cropping up again in 1570. And then again, we've got Leon's alias Holt in 1638. So that's Villa Leonum, but in English rather than Latin. So I am fascinated to know what's going on there. And then again, Holt and Holt in 1699. And those two examples there, interestingly, are being offered as the English name and the Welsh name of the village. So obviously, as far as people were concerned in the early modern period, Holt was the name of the village in English, and Holt was the name in Welsh. So that's the historic names of sort of towns and cities. In some cases, we've got hundreds of these. I mean, we've got about 50 different names for Carmarthen, for instance, including 2 in ancient Greek from the 2nd century. Carmarthen in Greek is Moridonom. Please don't ask me to spell it. But the amount of data we have for things like that obviously varies. Then the next sort of large source that we put in was the county inventories. Now, when the Royal Commission was founded in 1908, our original job, the Royal Commission itself, if you like, was to create a list of absolutely everything of any historical interest whatsoever in the entirety of Wales, which, being the Edwardian period, we did this originally by establishing publishing huge magisterial volumes on a county by county basis. And in the first 5, which is Carmarthenshire, Denbighshire, Montgomeryshire, Meirionydd, and Pembrokeshire, we also collected place name data. And basically we kept on producing these volumes, but as techniques got better and we learnt more and more, they got bigger and bigger and bigger until you reach the point where the Glamorgan volume is an entire shelf. And it was at that point that we decided that this was a bit ridiculous and we should start using the internet instead. But here are some examples from the Carmarthen inventory. And so things, Darkway Hill, Menhir, there, with a lot of these names, we have a small amount of information about the name. And when we transcribe these from the inventories, we transcribe the information as well. So if you click on one of these names, you'll find the small bit of information that we have about each name. And that's a thing that we've kept doing with other sources. If there's anything in the source that gives you any additional information about the name, we've included that as well. In some cases, I have to say, the interesting piece of information we have is we don't know why this is called this. For instance, there's a farm in Montgomeryshire which is called Maesygard, which means battlefield. And the interesting piece of information we have about this name is that there is no evidence whatsoever that there was ever a battle on this site. So, God knows. Then we also have the Pennyarth manuscript number 147, which is a list of all of the parishes in Wales, which was compiled in 1570 by a fascinating man called William Davies Llywelyn, who was a physician and a professional scribe and a poet. And over the course of his work, he was also a recusant, a Catholic when it was illegal to be Catholic. And what he used to copy scribally were Catholic manuscripts. And under the guise of his work as a doctor, he travelled around the country distributing them. And so in the course of this, he built up a wide range of contacts all around the country. And in circa 1570, he decided that for whatever reason, he would compile this list of all the different parishes. And obviously he, made use of his local contacts here, because the parishes, as you can see here, are arranged according to cumod, either the pre-conquest sort of territorial subdivision. And William Davies was from Breconshire and obviously spoke Breconshire Welsh. And this was before the Welsh language was standardized to any degree. So what you have is some interesting dialectical things going on, because, here are a list of place names from Anglesey. And yet they're written down in, obviously, him hearing someone saying them in Anglesey dialect and then him writing it down in Breconshire dialect. So there's some interesting linguistic things going on here. Tidwaylock instead of Tidwayliog, which shows sort of the influence of Breconshire Welsh. And the other thing is, I don't think he spoke English very well, because when he came to the areas where English was spoken in the mid-16th century, which roughly speaking is South Pembrokeshire and the Gower, he starts to struggle a bit. So you have English place names written down phonetically in Welsh. So Stainton in Pembrokeshire becomes Astaintwn, Yerbaston becomes Yerbastun, this sort of thing. There's a couple that I think he makes up. There's a village called Freystrop in Pembrokeshire, and he translates it as Freyster Gam. And a cam is a sort of a step, and strop apparently in early modern English is a step or a jump. So there's obviously an element of translation going on there. And then Freyster, I think, is his attempt to Welshify Frey. Now, William Davies Llywelyn in this one source, and me, because I'm very strange, are the only people who have ever referred to Freystrop as Freyster Gam. But I've been down there a few times, and it is very tempting to affix a new name to the village sign, but I've held off so far. And this map here shows all the different parishes in Wales in 1570. So you can see the dense settlements in the richer land, and things get much more scattered in the mountains. Then we moved on to the Parochialia, which was compiled by this man on the left here, Edward Llwyd, who was originally, there's a native Welsh speaker from Oswestry, and one of these wonderful people who was around in the 17th and 18th centuries, who was interested in everything. He was a linguist, he was a historian, he was a botanist. He invented Celtic studies as an academic discipline, basically in his spare time. And he was curator of the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. And one of the things he did while he was there was he decided that he was going to write the natural history of Wales. And in preparation for this, he wrote to every single vicar in the country with a long questionnaire, asking things like, what language or languages are spoken in the parish? What's the geography like? Are there any interesting and useful minerals? Are there any particularly interesting plants? What names are common in the district? Are there any sites of sort of historical or archaeological interest? And significantly, do you have any interesting place names? Now, they didn't all write back, and some of the responses have unfortunately been lost. But enough survives that it was published in 3 volumes in Archaeologia Cambrensis. And all the place names in each volume have been added to the list now. It's about 6,000 in total. And as you can see from the map here, there's only 2 in the parish of Holt, unfortunately, which is Holt and Holt, dating from 1699, that we saw earlier. But in the rest of Mylor, you know, the sort of the area around Wrexham and then Mylor Saesneg, we've actually got fairly good coverage. And then as you get further west into Denbighshire, we've got nearly every parish has a fairly detailed response. So, you know, you've got a reasonable idea of what Mylor Gymraeg looked like in the late 17th century. Then we also take in community projects, which is a very unsubtle way of saying, please run a local place names project. But this one, Percy Penfro, this was run by the local Menteri Iaith, so the body responsible for promoting the Welsh language in a given district. And this is the one for Pembrokeshire. And what they did was effectively created a second tithe map. You know, they asked farmers to give in the names of their fields. And the idea being that, you know, this was a fun community thing to do together in Welsh. And also it would emphasize the unique features of the Pembrokeshire dialect. And so what we got was a load of maps like you can see here, where, you know, the farms are color-coded and the fields are numbered, just like the tithe. And with the map, you'd get a key and it'd be name of farm, list of fields. And they collected, as I say, about 1,700 of these. And, you know, had a really great time with it. It was a great success. And there it sat in the desk of the Menteri Iaith's office in Crymych, until I happened to be down in Crymych a few months later giving a talk like this. And after the talk, a man rushed up to me and said, "Oh, I've got 2,000 field names sitting in a drawer in my desk. Do you want them?" And I said, "God, yes, please. Wonderful." And a week later, a package arrived in the office, and it was all of these maps. And I thought, "Oh, this is wonderful. Right, I must get round to that immediately." And then it sat in a drawer in my desk for a month or so, and I thought, this is ridiculous. So I contacted one of my students from when I was a lecturer in the Department of Welsh at Aberystwyth University. And I said, "Look, do you want an exciting internship opportunity in, you know, the fast-paced world of the Welsh heritage sector?" And she said, "Oh, fantastic." And I said, "Yeah, it's, you know, bilingual workplace, you know, really good for your Welsh." And she said, "Oh, that'd be brilliant." And I said, "Fantastic. I can't pay you anything," but bless her, she came anyway. And she spent a couple of weeks transcribing the names, and they're all in there now. In some cases, we didn't get a map. We just got farm name and field names. So if you are scrolling over the map in North Pembrokeshire and you come to a farm that seems to have sort of 75 different names, they're probably the names of the fields. And the plan is that at some point we'll, you know, go back to the farmers and ask them to, you know, point out to us which field is which. We have also been adding in sort of academic place name studies. So we started with the place names of Pembrokeshire, and we've so far got 1,505 names in, all from the north of the county. And to give you an idea of the absolute depth of work in this, the place names of Pembrokeshire is a 2-volume set, and the first 1,500 names come from pages 1 to 30 of the first volume. So this will probably keep us going until I retire. But it's an immense wealth of things from all different sources. There's, you know, medieval names in there, there's early modern names. There are a considerable amount of names that have been completely lost. You know, we don't know where they are, where the places they refer to are, but we've got them preserved in the list. So, you know, as I mentioned earlier, we will be able to use those and sort of bring them back to life in the naming of new housing estates in Pembrokeshire. The source we're working on at the moment is sorry, my throat's very dry, is the place names data from the Beirdd y Tywysogion and Beirdd yr Uchelwyr. So that's the poets of the princes, i.e. the professional poets that sang traditional metre praise poetry to the Welsh princes before the loss of independence. And then the poets of the nobility who did the same job after Wales stopped being independent. And obviously this is all medieval poetry and early modern to an extent, and it's all entirely in Welsh. So this is a really good source of early names in Welsh, because as I mentioned earlier, we tend to have sort of lots of Latinate variants, but this is what Welsh people at the time were calling places in Welsh. So this is the first page here you can see on the left, and if you look at Aberhonddu, which is Brecon, you can see the variations there. You have Aberhodni and then Aberhoddni, which is the metathesis of the river name there, and then Caerhodni. So rather than referring to the river itself, that's actually specifically referring to the town. And Tref Hodni doing the same thing there. And we've just started work on these, so this is going to sort of take a while to work through, but it's another really good early source. We are also working on what you might term Catholic sources, because obviously in common with England, it was illegal in Wales to be Catholic between 1536 and 1820, give or take, which of course in no way stopped people being Catholic. But if it's illegal to be Catholic and you face sort of fines and imprisonment for doing so, what you then need is a large bureaucracy to find out who the Catholics are and how much they're worth, so how much you can fine them for not going to church. And in Wales, of course, it's not enough to know that John Jones in a given location is a Catholic, because of course which one? So the recusant rolls, as they're termed, these are the records of people who refuse to conform to the Anglican Church. The recusant rolls are absolutely full of place names, and of course they were compiled by clerks in London who generally were not Welsh speaking themselves, so they are an absolute smorgasbord of wonderful mistranscriptions and misunderstandings of Welsh place names. So there's some really fascinating ones in there, and some sources we've already got in, like the 1768 returns of papists, which was again documenting where are the Catholics in every given diocese in England and Wales, whereas the recusant rolls themselves have been digitized and are freely available from the website of these people in the middle here, the Catholic Record Society, which is very handy because I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in the National Archives in Kew chasing this up. So it's all freely available on the internet, and it's a fascinating treasure trove of historical resources there. It's all available on their website. I'd recommend to anyone to go and have a look, honestly. And then the chap on the left here is Father Augustine Baker, who was he was a Benedictine monk and the foremost writer of mystical literature in the English language in the 18th century. He was also a Welshman. He was from Abergavenny. And back then, of course, Abergavenny was entirely Welsh speaking, as was Father Baker. And although he wrote his books in English, he kept his notes in Welsh. And his secretary, Father Leander Jones, was also from Abergavenny and was also a Welsh speaker. and we know that they communicated in Welsh. And when Augustine Baker was prevailed upon to write his autobiography, all of the bits that take place in his childhood are, of course, in Abergavenny, and any sort of reported speech or what have you is written in Welsh, and of course in Monmouthshire Welsh, which doesn't really exist anymore. And he writes the place names as he said them. So we've got sort of some interesting forms of place names in and around Abergavenny, including the fact that it was apparently known as Little Bristow in the area because of the huge trade they had with Bristol at the time. We also have had numerous additions made to the list by members of the public. Quite often people will, if you look on the list and you find that your house name isn't on it, please send it in. And if you can give us a rough date as well, that'd be excellent. And we have a lot of farmers sending us their field names, which is excellent because, then we've got the tithe name in 1840 and we've got the modern name. We've got the modern name now, and that's effectively what the sort of the three on the left are here. Glanmerin is it's a farm just behind my house, actually, sort of further up the valley. And what's interesting with this one is the fields are almost exactly the same. There's been a few boundary changes, but not many. And so are 90% of the names between 2022 and 1840. But what is interesting is that some of the names are the same, but they've moved. So Caegel, for instance, which you can see on the top left there. Caegel is where, if you look just above, it says Tîn Llwyn Mawr. Well, in 1840, that was Caegel. So there's been obviously certain confusion as to which one is which, even though most of them are still the same. And on the top right, that is a map of Pennebank Farm in Ceredigion. And this was, again, I was giving a talk and a man came up to me at the end and said, oh, I found an old map of the farm in the attic. Do you want it? Yeah, fantastic, So if you have anything like that just lying around, please do send it in. And then on the bottom right, this one was a school project back in 1970 in the village school in Llanellar in Ceredigion again. And basically the student was told, right, go and ask some of the local farmers what the names of their fields are. And so he did this, and he came back with sort of 72 field names from 4 or 5 farms. And, got high marks and thought nothing of it until, as an adult, a couple of years ago, he got interested in place names. And he looked up the farms on the Cynefin website. And, obviously he was local himself. And so he knew that there had been, there'd been no language shift in the area. There were still Welsh-speaking farmers. And they were, almost without exception, the descendants of the people who'd farmed there in 1841. So, there's been no language shift, there's been no change of ownership, but still about 1 in 3 names was different. So, you can see that there is a change in names. There's a natural change and there's an unnatural change. You can't sort of freeze these things in aspic. But with all of that in, to give you an idea of kind of the amount of data we've got, just in Holt Parish alone, as you can see, we've got 456 place names. And that is being added to all the time. So we've got a name for, I think, very nearly every field in the parish and all of the sort of farms that were there in 1900. And as I say, we've got some old pub names. So please do have a look at the website. If you notice anything that's wrong, because there are a certain amount of mistranscriptions in there, unfortunately, please let me know. And Also, if you find that your house isn't on there, please send it in. Or if if you farm and you use different names for the fields, please send those in as well. Because the thing about this project is this isn't just a sort of a 5-year thing where we collect a lot of data, we put it on the internet, and then we go and do something else. Welsh Government will be funding this forever, which is wonderful because it means, first off, that I have a nice job until I retire, and then my children can take it over. But also, the list will only ever expand, and we'll be adding new names from new sources forever. And as I say, this is used to protect Wales's place name heritage in a very real way in the 21st century. And this belongs to you, the people of Wales, so please use it, please add to it. I am available for any questions either at the end of this talk or by email. And just another quick note about the Welsh language there. I've talked a lot about Holt being an anglicised area, and obviously it is. Holt itself is an English place name. It's quite common in the northeast. But even here, where Welsh hasn't been spoken in a long time, there's still a few Welsh language place names. You can see Caerobyn and Cae Thomas there, down in the sort of the extreme south of the parish. So it's just a reminder that even in the most anglicised areas, Welsh is still there in the place names. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, James. I'll just start my video as well. That was fascinating. James agreed to take any questions. I don't know has anyone got any questions they'd like to put to James? Yeah, hello, Anne.
Hi, I'm sorry I was late joining. I was in the middle of a phone call, an emergency one. Thank you very much, James. I'm sorry I didn't hear the beginning of your talk. I'm particularly interested because I worked on the tithe map, must be
wonderful.
years ago now, and produced a plan with the field names on, with help from my parents at the time. So that's been used in the society quite a lot. At the time, I wanted to go on and try and get the new names, any changed field names, but I'm afraid we didn't manage that. It was something that was outstanding, so that would be great if that could be worked on now. So thank you for all the work you're doing on it. Just another thing I wanted to say about, you were asking about the Leonum, the Villa Leonum, and the
yes.
Leonum names. Other people will remember better, but I'm pretty sure that the castle was called Castle of the Lions at some time. So it seemed to come from that.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to have that mystery cleared up. And yeah, if there's any way I can help in collecting the sort of the modern names of fields, please let me know. I'd love to help with something like that.
Very much.
Anyone else? Okay, James, you mentioned that during the courses about places being lost off the map. Is that really possible in this day and age? From the Ordnance Survey maps, that you would lose a Welsh place name.
Ironically, the Ordnance Survey is one of the worst culprits.
Right.
The problem is their criteria for including names on the maps are: is it in common use?
Right.
But unfortunately, the way that they seem to go about deciding whether a thing is in common use is to ask tourists and not locals. So what you have is, and this has become quite acute in the west of the country, and particularly along the coast. So the Ordnance Survey needs to produce a new edition of the map, and so they go and see, right, are there any names that we need to add or take away? And if the tourists have come up with a name for a beach or a certain rock, then obviously it spreads like wildfire amongst the tourists, and it's found on tourist websites, and then the BBC gets hold of it and thinks, oh, obviously this is the English name for this, and so they use it in all of their English language material. And then the Ordnance Survey, naturally enough, thinks, oh right, this name is in wide use, right, well we better include it on the map. And then so what you'll have is initially you'll have Welsh place name brackets name the tourists have made up, and then gradually the Welsh place name will be superseded by the tourist name, and because that is the one that's used far more often, because the only one the only people using the original name are Welsh speaking locals, eventually the Welsh name will disappear off the map, and you'll just have the tourist name. And it's an unfortunate thing because they're not devolved, so they obviously they have a UK wide function, and they apply the same matrix to places all across the UK.
Right.
Which you then run up against the fact, well, okay, but here we have two languages.
Okay.
So all it's
okay, thank you, Jim. Deborah, I can see your hand up. You're muted, Deborah. Can you unmute?
It's English, I'm afraid, not Welsh. But it's things like pub signs, how they suddenly change. The pub, it means something, but all of a sudden they change the name, and it's no longer relevant.
Yeah, that's a very good example, actually. That happens.
Yes, the Australia
unfortunately
Arms.
A lot, doesn't it?
The Australia Arms, named after the coal mine, the seam, is now the Osbrewster.
Yeah, precisely. And I mean that's a perfect example of a historic English name with a link to the area, and just as important as anything else, and it gets changed because the brewery likes a different name. It's certainly not a problem that just affects.
I can see Jude and Nick may have got a hand up. Have you got a question?
Yes, please. Sorry, we haven't got any video, James. You mentioned Llanilla, where some names have changed, and I wondered whether is it that they're going from one Welsh name to another Welsh name, maybe just because it's something easier to spell or to say, so that people will understand the address.
Well, this is field names. So generally, what you find there is, if the use of the field changes. So if you have a field called Cae Gwartheg, because that's where you keep your cattle, but then you stop keeping cattle there and you start keeping sheep there, it's inevitably going to end up being called Cae Defaid instead.
Right.
Or increasingly, what we're seeing actually is a possible sort of threat of loss of knowledge of field names is the increasing use of contractors, because obviously that historically the farmer and farmer's family would have known the names of every field on their farm, but they maybe wouldn't have known the names of every field 3 farms over. But if you've got a contractor who's doing sort of 5 farms in a district, doing all the ploughing or something, he's going to know the numbers and the grid references for the farms, for the fields, but he's not necessarily going to know the names. So there's a danger of losing knowledge there. Basically, we need another tithe to,
Thank you.
Anybody else with a question? Okay, then we'll move to the vote of thanks, which will fall to me. It's been a fascinating talk, James. Very, very interesting. I'm sure all of us have taken something a little different out of the talk. And there were a couple of things that were pertinent to me. I think you mentioned about pub names being recorded on the tithe. And I think that for many, many people, that's probably maybe the most important thing in their lives, is where they can go and socialise and get a drink, and that's why it's recorded. And the other interesting thing for me, you showed a slide for the inventories, and it was Llansteffan, and it mentioned Llanabry. For me personally, my great-grandparents and many other relatives are buried in Llansteffan and Llanabry. That's where we originated from. Right. It was quite interesting to see that popped up. But on behalf of the Society, thank you very much indeed for a very, very interesting talk. And we normally give just a little clap, because that's all we can do in this day and age. But thank you very much indeed.
No, pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Okay.
Steve,
Yes.
can I just ask that people who would like to come to the 30th celebration
All
at
right.
our hall, the garden party that we're having, could they please contact Brian and let him know that they would like to come? Because we're going to do quite a bit of catering, and we'd like to know how many numbers we're going to be catering for. So if you would like to come, and we would like to see everybody there, please get in touch with Brian as soon as possible.
Okay. I think he has sent out an email, hasn't he, Helen? So.
Yes, he has, yes.
Okay, and then that's it for the lectures. So we look forward to next season's. Thank you all very much indeed. Good night, all.
Thanks, Steve.
Good night.
Right.